Is it just me, or does he look like comedian Michael Ian Black? You'll never watch this movie the same way again, I'm sorry. Welcome, y'all. Taylor James Johnson here, and I'm loving the 80s because this is the decade where they would give us things that were made with human hands of artists, geniuses, pumping out beautiful, wonderful, epic films like this, Clash of the Titans. And yes, I do enjoy the big Hollywood modern CGI remake, retelling, but there's truly something special about the work of Ray Harryhausen, the stop motion. It feels magical, mythical, like it was created by God himself, or Zeus, whatever your denomination. So yeah, it's time to revisit it. Clash of the Titans! Oh no! Kraken!
Ancient mythology is the basis for many of our most famous fairy tales and fantasy stories. Greek mythology in particular would go on to inspire other beliefs and tales around the world. Greek mythology is a favorite of mine, and I grew up reading the stories and legends. There have been films and TV series based around these tales over many decades, but one of them stands head and shoulders above them all, the epic 1981 classic Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans would bring to life the gods and goddesses and the creatures from these stories in a way never truly seen before, and it would be all under the skillful hand of a legend himself, Ray Harryhausen. So let's travel back to the land where horses had wings and krakens ruled the sea as we revisit Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans was the brainchild of writer Beverly Cross. Cross was a massive fantasy fan himself and had written one of the most famous fantasy films of all time, and Tom Hanks' favorite film, Jason and the Argonauts. A few years prior to Titans, Cross also penned the Sinbad epic Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. Titans went through some changes before hitting the big screen in 1981. The film was actually shot in 79 and wouldn't be released until 81 due to the number of special effects within and post-production. Beverly Cross was an avid scholar when it came to mythology, and this film would see all of his previous experience coming together in the epic. The other films he was famous for were The Longships, which is a Viking story, and Genghis Khan, a dramatic telling about the Mongol leader's life. Both of these films would star legends of the silver screen, with Sidney Poitier, James Mason, and Omar Sharif, to name a few. Within Clash of the Titans, we'd see myth, history, adventure, and romance, all rolled into one, with more legendary actors taking center stage. Clash of the Titans is mostly known for the creatures that inhabited it, and these were the creations of one of cinema's truest wizards, the great Ray Harryhausen. Harryhausen was not only the effects designer in the film, but he was also a producer. Chances are you've seen his work in movies, but even better odds are you've seen a movie that was inspired by his work in Hollywood. Harryhausen started in films as an assistant on Mighty Joe Young, working alongside Willis O'Brien, the man who created King Kong and who would inspire Harryhausen to become an effects artist. This was in 1949, and Harryhausen would continue working as a visual effects artist in numerous classic films like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, 1,000,000 Years BC, and many more. Harryhausen was a master of stop motion. His work is iconic, with Jason and the Argonauts and his Sinbad and dinosaur work, where many special effects and film artists will say they got the bug to start making films. Artists like Phil Tippett and Rick Baker were inspired by his work. Harryhausen was part of a legendary group who really helped inspire the monster kids of the 70s and 80s. Ray was very good friends with the king of the monster kids, Forrest J. Ackerman, and also Ray Bradbury, the prolific writer who he was actually friends with from back in his high school days. The work of these three can't be stressed enough for who and what it inspired. Harryhausen was a wizard, and you can't convince me different, and that wizardry was at its peak with Clash of the Titans. Sadly, this would be the last time Harryhausen would do this sort of work for the big screen again. But if you were going to have a film to go out on, Titans would be the one. Harryhausen would create some of the most beautiful stop-motion effects in cinema with his work on Titans. Medusa, Pegasus, the Kraken, Calibos, these creatures would come alive under the skilled hand of Harryhausen. And for the film to truly work, they had to, as the monsters within the mythology are some of the most key players of the story. Clash of the Titans follows the story of Perseus, the half-god son of Zeus, fathered by the king of the gods when he fell in love with a princess named Danae of the kingdom of Argos. Her father throws Danae and her infant son into the sea in a wooden box, and Zeus takes his revenge on the king as well as his entire kingdom using the terrifying Kraken.
Let loose the Kraken!
Perseus and his mother live, and he grows up into a strong young man. But the gods are fickle, as is fate, and the goddess Thetis, who has her own son Calibos, takes revenge on Zeus through Perseus after Zeus curses her son. She takes Perseus and places him in the kingdom of Joppa, and is there where Perseus finds his fate and falls in love with the beautiful princess Andromeda. But Andromeda and her kingdom are also cursed by Thetis and Calibos, and in order to save his princess and her people, Perseus must embark on a magical quest unlike any other. Clash of the Titans, as I said, went through some changes before the version we're all familiar with hit screens. Firstly, there was the casting of Perseus. Harryhausen's longtime producer partner Charles Shear had to fight for the type of actor he wanted in the lead role of the dashing hero. Some studios wanted a more muscular type, with Arnold Schwarzenegger actually being touted by Orion Pictures as their choice. Shear didn't want him for a couple of reasons. First, the role required dialogue, and at the time, Schwarzenegger was still raw when it came to English. Conan would be released the following year, and even then his dialogue was still limited.
I have no tongue for it.
From Rhapsody for Wind.
Flowers grow around here.
But the other reason was the filmmakers didn't want this to come off as the mini sword and sandal epics that were well known from Italy. Most of these films would have a large, muscular hero at their center and came across as very camp. There were a whole slew of Hercules films from the late 50s through the 60s, and the makers of Clash of the Titans wanted this film to stand out as different and to be taken seriously. Casting was a way to stand out from the previous films and give some more class to the Clash. Enter Harry Hamlin. Hamlin was not only handsome and fit, something that would be required for a role like Perseus, but he was also a Shakespearean-trained actor. Hamlin didn't take the role almost, but once he found out who was playing Zeus, there was no way he was going to pass it up. The irony would be Hamlin would never be on screen with his godfather. I had to say that at least once. Laurence Olivier. And as I said, casting was a way to give the film a higher pedigree and stand out. Enter the pantheon of the gods. Laurence Olivier was about as godlike as you could find when it came to actors. Olivier was old Hollywood royalty and a perfect choice for the king of the gods. His Zeus was imposing, impressive, and commanding. Sadly, Olivier was very ill during filming and would have to take breaks due to his health. He had a number of health problems, many of which caused muscle weakness. Olivier would only make a few more films after Clash of the Titans before passing in 1989. Hera was portrayed by the incomparable Claire Bloom, another great of the silver screen and stage.
Does it matter? The death of a girl and her child.
Girl.
Thetis would be played by Maggie Smith. Smith was another grand lady of the stage and screen. In this role, though, she would be the vengeful goddess mother. Fans around the world would know her decades later as Professor McGonagall, and honestly, if you love Harry Potter or know someone who does, introduce them to this movie soon.
Had it been his own child, Perseus, he would have forgiven him. But for my son Calibos, there is to be no mercy.
Aphrodite would be played by the stunning Ursula Andress. While she got one of the top billings on the movie poster, Andress only had one line in the movie.
But Zeus transformed himself into a glittering shower of gold and visited her.
But when you're the goddess of love, you don't really need a lot of lines. Fittingly, she and Hamlin would fall in love during filming in 1979, and the relationship would result in a son born the following year. Susan Fleetwood was Athena, the goddess of wisdom who refuses to give up her owl to Perseus. Fleetwood was another pro from the stage and screen, and she should be familiar to viewers of Fantasizing About Fantasy Films from our Young Sherlock Holmes episode as Mrs. Dribb. Sadly, Susan Fleetwood would pass at the young age of 51 in 1995 from cancer. Jack Gwillem was Poseidon, the god of the sea and keeper of the Kraken. Gwillem was another of the pros and had worked both on stage and screen. Funnily enough, he'd appeared as King Hades in Jason and the Argonauts in 1963. Burgess Meredith was Ammon, the friend of Perseus who finds him stranded and alone in the amphitheater where he resides.
Wherever? What do you mean you don't know where you are?
Ammon was the playwright, and Meredith plays him wonderfully and with a great bit of humor. Cutie Bowker is Andromeda, the princess who must sacrifice herself in order to save her people unless Perseus is able to save her in time. A few years earlier, Bowker was starring opposite another legendary creature in the BBC version of Dracula with Louis Jourdan. Her mother, Queen Cassiopeia, was played by Sian Phillips. Phillips was another stage and screen pro. She portrayed another legendary mother a few years after Titans, and wonderfully creep everyone out in David Lynch's Dune as Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam. One of my, and many other, favorite characters in the film is Calibos, who is sort of a hybrid when it comes to live action and stop motion. Calibos was originally to be all stop motion, but it was decided that for a main villain like him, it needed more to bring humanity, such as it was, to the character. So the script was rewritten and Calibos was given dialogue, and actor Neil McCarthy was cast in the role. McCarthy suffered from acromegaly, a disease which caused facial features to grow larger than normal, among other symptoms. This made him very recognizable in all of the roles he played, of which there were many. Usually cast as a sinister character in films, he broke that mold with his appearance in The Monster Club the same year as Titans as a rather cheerful vampire hunter. As Calibos, he was stunning. He could switch from terrifyingly feral to heartbreakingly tortured due to his curse. With the skillful editing and magic of Harryhausen, mixed with McCarthy's talent, magic was made.
Medusa, divine goddess of the sea, hear the prayer of your son Calibos. Show me the way to justice.
Sadly, Neil McCarthy would pass away at the young age of 52, only a few years after filming in 1985. Filming would take place around the UK, Spain, and Italy in 1979 from May through October. It's interesting to note that while it is called Clash of the Titans, the big bads in the film aren't actually Titans, nor is Perseus. The Titans were the first children of heaven and earth and came before the Olympians, so the Kraken, Medusa, and Calibos were never quote-unquote Titans. Just throwing that out there. One particularly interesting story that happened on set was Harry Hamlin went on strike due to how the scene with the killing of Medusa was written. He actually went into his trailer and refused to shoot the scene as on the page. It read similarly to how Captain Carter went down in Multiverse of Madness, or Death by Shield, and considered less messy and not as graphic. To Hamlin, it wasn't the way the myth actually was written, and he felt it should stay true to it. Finally, after much debate, Hamlin got his decapitation scene, and we got that really wickedly gross Medusa body leaking out acid blood from a neck stump. Clash of the Titans was a massive hit when it was released, beaten only by Raiders of the Lost Ark for first place at the box office as they came out on the same day. It was an enjoyable, scary thrill ride for kids and adults. There was really nothing like it at the time, and it served as a bridge for the classic epics from the 50s that Harryhausen had helped create to the modern age of filmmaking. In the case of Calibos, modern makeup met the special effects of the Golden Age to create a monster. There were merchandise tie-ins, and I think at this point everyone has seen the Lunchbox. But there was also a toy line that sadly didn't come to complete fruition. I personally have Calibos. My original one's tail broke off and I cried. Perseus and Thallo figures. There was a Charon, Pegasus, and a Kraken made. The Kraken is super rare. Sadly, that's all that was produced. I was beyond disappointed at 6 years old when the Bubo I saw advertised never happened. But then it did. More on that in a second. In 2006, Gentle Giant released a line of figures of the Kraken, Medusa, and Calibos as part of the Creatures of Ray Harryhausen. If you find these, if you can find them, they will cost you a pretty penny. In 2007, Tidal Wave Publishing released Wrath of the Titans. The title would be used for the remake sequel a few years later. This was actually based on a sequel idea that Harryhausen had for the 1981 film, and would follow Calibos from the land of the dead out to destroy Perseus and his family. It was part of a line of comics and would include creatures from Harryhausen's filmography, including the Cyclops from the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. As part of their Harryhausen's 100th anniversary line, Star Ace Toys released a limited edition massive Kraken figure that came with Andromeda in chains, along with a Kraken head bust. They also produced a Medusa, but the one that made me giddy was the fact they made a 2-size Bubo. They made my owl. The love for Clash of the Titans continues to this day, and the movie still holds up. Actually far better than the remake that was released in 2010. I won't go deep into this film and its sequel, but the movie was released in 3D with a massive amount of digital effects. And while I think we can all agree Liam Neeson is a god, there was something missing here that made the original so special. There may have been a bit of Star Wars worked in, as most films had during that time. Ray Harryhausen swore that the metal clicking and chirping Bubo was designed before R2-D2.
Don't worry, my little friend.
But Clash of the Titans was based on the stories that Star Wars and all those other heroic tales were inspired by. These myths and creatures were what inspired it all. And in the case of what Harryhausen created throughout his career, I would consider him one of the Titans too.
What if one day there were other heroes like him?
What if courage and imagination were to become everyday mortal qualities? What would become of us?
It would no longer be needed. But for the moment, there is sufficient cowardice, sloth, and mendacity down there on Earth to last forever.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. Joe Blow was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.